And there are 4 volumes of this, and they're all available for us to be purchased. Um, what gave you the idea? What was the catalyst for doing this? And why did you call it the Untold Stories?
When I like first moved to New York, I was so excited to be inside each theater that I learned so much about. I really was like, oh my God, it's the Imperial where Les Mis was, and now I'm here seeing Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. It was so much about like connecting what I was doing to the
Mm.
past of the theaters themselves. And
Pippin for me. Pippin. Imperial was Pippin.
yeah,
Yeah.
which I'm saying the
A
Imperial is
long time ago,
the
right?
opening chapter of this book, and there's a lot of Pippin stuff too. But so the first Broadway show I worked on was I got to work on the musical title of show when I was in college. And then right after I graduated, we went to the Lyceum and I was the director's assistant. And I spent so much time exploring that theater, which
Mm.
is the oldest continually operating Broadway theater. It opened in 1903. It's like filled with history and fascinating like nooks and crannies and different parts of the theater. And so much of it was me being a nerd with title of shows, composer lyricist Jeff Bowen, and talking about other shows that have played at the theater and who had which dressing room. And that tended to like that planted the seeds in my brain for like someday I want to write a book that's like a combination of like at this theater, but also like all the stories that like people will tell you, like untold stories, if you like kind of know what to ask, that are actors and producers and directors. But also I was like someday like I would love to interview stagehands and musicians and company managers and door people. And so that's exactly what happened. I was approached. I do this concert series that I've put together for over a decade now, called If It Only Even Runs a Minute, which celebrates
Yeah.
appreciated musicals. And at one of the concerts, I was approached by a bunch of 2 women who were starting a publishing company and who said like, would you want to pitch us a book? And I think they thought I was going to pitch them a book about underappreciated musicals because that was the concert. And of course Untold Stories of Broadway includes a lot of underappreciated musicals. But I was like, oh, could I do this idea now? I always imagined maybe I'd write this book in 20 years, but maybe I could write it now. And so I think the idea of being like a 20 something who was exploring these theaters herself and who was working on Broadway shows for the first time and who was like awe inspired by most of the people she was interviewing, and the ones I wasn't awe inspired by, it was because they were my peers, awe inspiring in a different way. It just all kind of started to happen around 2013. And so, yeah, there are 4 books. There will eventually be 6. And each book takes readers through the history of 8 or so Broadway houses, including 7 currently operating Broadway houses and 1 lost Broadway theater that's been demolished or is no longer, just through people's personal stories and memories and also like discoveries that I've made.
Were you interested in architecture, or is it or something about the edifices and the way they're constructed? Is,
Definitely, but really like from a like layman's perspective, laywoman's
mm,
perspective, if that makes
yeah,
sense. It was more
sure.
about like, oh, the Richard Rodgers was the first Broadway theater with like a democratic structure, meaning that the people with balcony tickets didn't have to enter through a different entrance because they were lower class, and that changed that theater. And this is what happened after. It's more that than it's like this is from like the Elizabethan era. It's more about like how the spaces impact what happens inside of them. And I talked so much about like these 2 Broadway theaters have a secret tunnel between them, and this dressing room is like the exciting dressing room from this theater because this is who's been in it. But I think over the years, some of the architecture has certainly come into play when it comes into stories that are relevant about the shows.
Well, I mean, yes, absolutely. And I do think a story like what you say about the Richard Rodgers Theater and many other theaters, when you approach them through a socio-cultural or a socio-political lens, makes a statement. And architecture certainly, and certainly the changing the landscape of what is called, or what is the Broadway district, the Times Square district, the show district between what, 7th Avenue and 9th Avenue, 40th Street and 50th. I mean, whatever those boundaries are that are legitimate Broadway theaters, yeah, I think there's lots of stories that have socio-cultural and socio-political implications.